Russian state is completely out of money. The budget deficit is so bad that they've started firing kindergarten teachers and medical doctors all over Russia because the state simply doesn't have money to pay their salaries. Yes, it's that bad. To continue the war in Ukraine, Putin needs lots of money. To keep the political situation in the country stable, Putin needs lots of money. Where will Vladimir Putin and his minions get the money? That's the question everyone is asking right now. No answer at this point. But I think I have figured that out. Vladimir Putin wasted himself some time ago, and it's very scary for Russian people. The Minister of Finance of Russia, Anton Siluanov, made an official statement admitting that Russia's run out of money. He publicly warned Russian people that they should be getting ready for hard times. He announced upcoming budget cuts. The economic tsunami I've been talking about for 3 years now is confirmed by the Minister of Finance. But before I tell you the financial catastrophe that many Russians now are heading towards, I want to explain why the lack of federal money is so important in Russia and so dangerous in Russia compared to other countries. Now, let me quickly compare the USA and Russia. When the US federal government runs out of funds, a government shutdown occurs. And here's what happens step by step. Non-essential government services shut down, but essential services continue. The essential services include military operations, air traffic control, border protection, federal prisons, and some public health services. Usually, delays in government services occur, such as passport, visa processing, national parks closures, some court services slow down, and things like that happen. But essential services continue. Now, what happens if Russian federal government runs out of funds? It also keeps paying the essential services in full, perhaps even a little higher. And non-essential services suffer. Funding gets cut for them. Only essential services in Russia are considered a bit different from the rest of the world. They are the Silviki, those government agencies which are armed and can legally use violence against Russian citizens. The National Police, Rosgvardia, the KGB, the Federal Police, the Office of Prosecutor General, etc. 16 agencies altogether. That is the unofficial social contract Vladimir Putin has with his armed servants, with the Praetorians. They take orders from Putin. They do not ask questions. They execute orders as told and use violence to scare and punish Russian people. In return, they get rewarded handsomely. No money, no service. They don't get paid. They don't execute orders. Simple as that. So no matter what happens in the economy, no matter what kind of a deficit it runs, Siloviki will be getting paid. And non-essential services, well, that's everything else. School teachers, medical doctors, medical personnel, university professors and staff, provincial governments, urban transportation companies, state-owned companies, everything that is owned, paid by, or subsidized by the federal government. And don't forget the retirees. They get paid from the federal government also. There are currently 17.5 million federal employees in Russia, or a quarter of the entire labor force. And there are 42 million retirees. All are getting paid by the state. So imagine the impact of the lack of funds in the federal budget for these people. They would be either laid off, or their salaries would be cut off, or their salaries will simply be delayed. I have seen it happen. We have seen it happen in Russia. Back in early 90s, that's exactly what was happening. Every fourth person in the labor force. Imagine the economic impact it would have on the country. And imagine the social impact it would have on Russian society. Now, again, Russian federal government is out of money. Right now, it's run dry. We have started seeing the effects of this 2 months ago. 2 Russian provinces started laying off the federal employees by hordes. Kemerovo province has laid off many kindergarten teachers, and Krasnoyarsk province has started laying off medical doctors, nurses, and medical personnel. The reason? There's lack of federal funds, no money to pay their salaries. I hope you understand now that the lack of federal funds creates the economic and social impact that is much stronger in Russia than would be in any other country. So having enough money to be in the black is critical for Putin, and there are 3 major reasons for that. Number 1, to continue enjoying the support of his Praetorians, Silviki, to continue having the foundation of his power. Number 2, to keep the social stability in the country. And number 3, to continue waging the war in Ukraine. Hey, Putin needs more missiles, more tanks, more planes, more bullets, more guns, and more soldiers. And that costs money. So at this point, we all understand that Putin must have enough money to hang on to his power. And this is the dilemma. In the last 3 years, Russia has been continuously increasing federal budget expenses. Hey, the war costs a lot of money. And on the contrary, Russia has been losing its bread makers, oil and natural gas export revenues. And now in 2025, another major revenue is declining: taxes, both personal and corporate taxes. Companies close their doors, they go bust, declare bankruptcies, and people, they also default on their loans, they declare personal bankruptcies, and they are laid off now. Tax revenue is declining. That's natural. At the same time, Russia has run out of all savings. The Fund of National Welfare that was supporting Putin for 3 years, now it's dried out. And Russia, at the same time, cannot borrow any money in the international financial markets. Putin is cornered. Not so fast. Putin must have money, and he will have money. Before I tell you Putin's latest trick, I would like to pause and tell you that something's very odd happening. It's very discouraging, and I'm scared of losing my voice, this YouTube channel. Seems like every day now something happens. Power outage, internet outage, and it looks like I am targeted. I started a live stream. I was about halfway through, and all of a sudden my internet was cut off, and the live stream ended abruptly. And before that, before I started, I had a power outage for about 40 seconds or so. So if I was running the live stream, it would also be cut, short. So friends, I would like to thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for your messages of love, support. Thank you for your prayers. I feel like I'm running against the wind, but you have my word that no matter what happens, I will do my best trying to share the truth of what Russia is becoming. So again, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Now I will tell you how Russian federal government will use 3 methods to fill up the budget, the federal budget. All 3 methods are very unwise and unsustainable for a long run. But in the short run, they will provide some financial relief for the troubled economy, for the troubled budget. The first method is corporate super tax. Back in August 2023, 2 years ago, a law was created called the Law on the Taxation Corporations on Excess Profits of Previous Years. It has given the federal government an unlimited power to charge additional tax large corporations for the previous tax years. Basically, the state comes in and says, hey, we think you didn't pay enough tax 2 years ago. Pay extra now. Well, that's called extortion, but it's legalized in Russia now. And this method has been used a few times already, back in 2023 and 2024 with metallurgical companies and Gazprom. I actually don't feel bad about this corporate super tax because all large corporations belong to Putin's friends and his inner circle, so let them be it. The second method is good old printing press. It's been in operation since the start of the war in Ukraine. The money mess in Russia has doubled since 2022. They were busy printing money. But in November of 2024, they pressed the turbo button. It's called repo auctions. Now, I've talked about repo auctions quite a few times in the previous live streams. In a nutshell, the central bank loans to the commercial banks. They take that money loaned, received from the central bank, and instantly buy government bonds from the Ministry of Finance and put such bonds as collateral for the loans they received from the central bank. And these loans are usually short term, so in 1 month time, when it comes time to pay back, the commercial banks fail to repay the loans, and the central bank takes the collateral. Now, the central bank possesses the Ministry of Finance securities. Well, it's a pretty complicated scheme, but it's old good printing press, just in a new digital form. Now, the central bank used this scheme twice already, in November and December of 2024 for 1 trillion rubles each. They needed to finance the budget deficit at the end of the last year. And they promised they wouldn't use that scheme anymore. Just 2 times, that's it. Now fast forward a few months, and now they use these repo auctions to print hundreds of billions rubles every week. They have set targets for every week now. These 2 methods are good to give Russian budget some money, but they cannot bail Putin out. It's few trillion rubles here and there, but consider the budget deficit is growing fast. At the end of last year, the budget deficit for 2025 for the entire year was supposed to be 1.17 trillion rubles, and they just upgraded it to, increased it to 3.8 trillion rubles. They tripled it just in 3 months' time. And the budget deficit is growing. So these 2 methods are tiny toy pistols, and Putin needs financial nuclear bomb. And he will use the stock market as that much needed nuclear bomb. He has started the preparation already, and it's quite a sinister plan. How do I know that? I read the news of Russian propaganda, and I read the fine print. This news came out on May 7th, right before the V-Day parade, when Russians were concentrating on a completely different thing, so everyone missed this news. The fine print, okay? On May 7th, right before the V-Day celebration, when no one in Russia was paying attention to anything, or people just out there having a good time, barbecuing, enjoying good weather, finally, Russian President Vladimir Putin set a goal to ensure the growth of the stock market capitalization of at least 66% of Russia's GDP by 2030, according to the presidential decree on the national development goals of the Russian Federation for the period up to 2030, for the future up to 2036. I quote TASS, Russia's premier propaganda agency, ensuring the growth of stock market capitalization to at least 66% of gross domestic product by 2030 and up to 75% of gross domestic product by 2036. The share of long-term savings of citizens in their total savings to at least 40% by 2030 and up to 45% by 2036. Such targets have been set as a part of the achievement of the national goal of a sustainable and dynamic economy. I end quote. Have you noticed anything strange? First of all, how in the world the state would ensure the growth of capitalization of stock market? That's up to performance of the companies whose shares are traded at the stock market. The state can help companies to increase their capitalization by creating right economic environment in the country, to lower taxes, to ease off regulations, to create right economic policies and to attract foreign investments, to increase living standard of the citizens so they spend more money, they buy more goods and services, therefore the companies grow, to allow to create conditions for domestic companies to expand overseas. That's how you help to increase capitalization of your stock market. Okay, but you can't just order the increase of the capitalization of the stock market. It sounds insane. That's the first odd thing. Another very odd thing is this growth of capitalization is mentioned next to people's savings. What does the state have to do with people's savings? Why does it poke its nose there? It's up to people to have long-term savings, short-term savings, no savings at all. You know, the state has nothing to do. It can not even talk about that. I think I have found the answer. The state is putting these two things together in this Putin's statement because it wants to combine these two things. That's right. It will combine these two things. The growth of capitalization of the stock market and the long-term savings of Russian citizens. Folks, we are witnessing the birth, perhaps of the biggest government fraud in the history of humankind. Now, this is what Putin will do. Listen to me very carefully. Number one, Vladimir Putin sets the goal of increasing the capitalization of the stock market by a great deal, by 66% of the GDP of Russia. And he sells it to Russian people as a good thing, something that will make Russian economy stronger, something that will be to the benefit of everyone. Number two, the state comes in and puts a freeze on people's money in commercial banks, on their savings, on their deposits. The goal? To increase the capitalization of the stock market. The Russian people will be sold this idea that their money, entirely or partially, will be frozen in their bank accounts, but not confiscated. Instead, they will be exchanged for stock, for the shares of some companies that the state decides to, exchange. So Russian people, instead of being just citizens, they will become investors. They will own some stock of some companies that the state will decide for them. That way, they will save their money, they will help the economy, they will be the owners, co-owners of large companies. Why does the state need to do that? You see, Russian companies, state-owned companies, fully owned or partially owned, are in troubles. Most of them are in troubles. Well, I can say all of them are in troubles. They need bailouts, or they will need bailouts. Take any industry except for the military-industrial complex in Russia, economic troubles. Russian state just came up with official statistics. There is a recession in the civil industries. Every single large corporation needs a bailout. Vladimir Putin will take the money that Russians keep in the bank accounts and use to, number one, bail out the companies that the state has ownership in, and number two, will take that money and will continue feeding it to the military-industrial complex. And number three, the state, of course, will announce that this measure would be temporary, not permanent. And of course, the state would set timelines of buying back the stock at higher price and things like that. And of course, the shares of those companies will be worthless. Russian people are facing this very real possibility of losing their savings. There are currently 55 trillion rubles in commercial banks, personal accounts of Russian people. That's about $650 billion. And fully or partially, those savings will be taken by the state and used for own purposes. And the Russians, they will be stiffed again. This is how I think Vladimir Putin will use the stock market as a weapon. I think he will succeed and steal tens of trillions from Russian people soon. Only that's not sustainable economic policy. It will backfire in the long run and it'll destroy Russia's future completely, whatever is left of it now. And it proves one more time that the only goal Vladimir Putin has is to hang on to his power for as long as possible, at any cost. And yes, I've said it many times, Russian people will ultimately be picking up the bill for what Vladimir Putin and the Russian state is doing in Ukraine with Ukraine. Carthago delenda est.